Hey, Savvy Social Workers. Welcome to my program development and program evaluation presentation.
So first we're going to get into what is program development. Program development is essentially a roadmap or an action plan that provides the guidance needed to develop and build effective community programs. But before we just dive right into developing a program, we like to start with pre-planning. So prior to developing the infrastructure for the program, practitioners need to engage in the pre-planning process. It does not have to be complicated or detailed, but it should lay out the initial ideas and steps to achieve the overall program goal. That is the main point of pre planning. Simple brainstorming about the problem or the need and its impact on the community. It's going to focus on what will be accomplished through the program, resources needed, and the process required to achieve program success. Now, one of the early steps in the pre planning process is going to be the needs assessment. A community needs assessment is a systematic process of identifying the needs or gaps in service, as well as the resources and strengths available to meet those needs. Some of the tasks that will be performed is you want to describe your target audience, the identified problem, program planning process, and the need for your agency to address the problem. So, some tools that we use to complete this task um, is going to be questions and questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, and collecting data on existing organizations. So, you can do some literary researches or anything like that. Now, there are some very important questions that you need to ask when you're in the planning stage, such as what is the dominant community needs? Why should the needs be addressed? Does the community identify the proposed needs as important? Is the community ready to address the needs? What resources are required to address the needs? Who would help address the needs? And what factors will impede meeting the needs? All of these questions should be asked in the pre planning process whenever you are getting ready to conduct the needs assessment for the community. And remember, once you actually get into the needs assessment, these are the tasks that you are going to be performing, and you can perform these tasks by using these tools. Understanding that a needs assessment is one of the first things that you would want to conduct is going to be very important for you to know in regards to the ASWB exam, especially when you are trying to develop a program in a community or in an agency. You have to first determine what the need is, as well as answer all the questions that I just went over. A community assessment should focus on the needs, strengths, and capacity of the community. As the program begins to take shape, practitioners should refer back to the community assessment results or the needs assessment results to stay on track and develop a program that matches the community's needs. Prior to conducting any sorts of community or needs assessment, practitioners need to contact the local institutional review board. So before we're getting ready to do any research, we have to contact the IRB. So here are some steps to conducting the needs assessment. You want to first define your community. So this is the demographic makeup and the attitudes and values amongst that community. Then you want to identify your assets. These can be people, organizations and associations, locations, equipments and tools, all of these things that are considered assets or strengths in your community. Then you want to collect community data and compile a report. You do this by conducting interviews, focus groups, and surveys, and then you compile that into one report to be able to present as far as why you need said program or whatever it is you're trying to develop. And then you want to create an action plan. This is going to be based off of the findings from your community needs assessment. The next step in program development is creating a planning team or a task force. Usually, we can refer to a planning team whenever we're trying to do something within an agency, or a task force whenever we're trying to do something within the community. And I know that we're missing the R in force, but excuse the typo, but that is task force. So, in this step, the task that we are going to be focusing on is developing a team to help to plan, develop, and implement the new program. This can be agency team members, which are like directors, the admins, or team members. They can also be therapists. When we're looking at task force team members, like I said, this is more for the larger populations or more in the community when we're talking about task force. This can be community leaders, business owners, hospital staff, law enforcement, other community agencies, or just members of the community in general. So remember, when we're talking about a planning team, that's usually used within like an agency setting, and a task force is usually within a community setting. Now, after we have completed our needs assessment and developed our team, the next thing is now we as a team want to develop a mission as well as put together our goals and objectives. So you can pause this and look at um, the different goals and objectives in creating the program. Just understand that your mission is where you want to define a focus or adopt a frame of reference for your proposed program. Planning the program should never be an isolated process. Collaboration with the community is essential. And here is also where you want to focus on the community strengths when you are developing the goals and objectives. Make sure that they accurately reflect potential solutions to the problems that are found during that needs assessment. Make sure that they're realistic and that they're measurable. They should be related to the priorities of the program that you're trying to develop, and they need to be outcomes based. And more importantly, they should be developed with a targeted population in mind and should be community centered. So, again, you can pause and read through this in its entirety, but these are the most important things when it comes to developing your mission as well as your goals and objectives in the program development process. Now, after we have our mission and our goals and objectives, now it's time to develop an action plan. This is where we're going to prioritize our ideas, determine how much money or resources is needed, identify perspectives, and lead people who's going to be in certain roles, establish details, and identify collaborators, as well as collaborate with the community. How are we going to collaborate with the community? This is where we develop that action plan of how we're going to do all of these things. Now that we have our action plan, it's time to implement the program. This is where the program services are offered to those in needs. So the task here is we're going to conduct media campaigns, recruit volunteers, develop collaborations, and implement the activities. We also want to finalize the roles of who, what, when, where, and how um, they're going to serve within the implementation of this program. Now, now that we've implemented the program, this is where the evaluation comes in. This is where we measure the effectiveness of the program. So the task during this step is you want to identify how you will verify documents and qualify program activities and their effects. What are the outcomes are you're measuring? What are the tools you're using to measure the outcomes? These are going to be very important when you are identifying documents and the quality of the program. You also want to demonstrate the outcome of the program, the progress, and the impact of the program. This is a part of evaluating its effectiveness, okay? You also want to evaluate the progress and barriers and make adjustments accordingly. So you are evaluating this program as it is being implemented and seeing, okay, where are we progressing? What are the barriers? And we're going to make those adjustments as we are going through. This should take place consistently throughout the program and or at the end. Okay, so we're going to do it consistently, and of course we're going to do it at the end as well. Evaluation should be linked to the initial goals and objectives set for the program. So when you go back to evaluating the program, it is going to be based off of the overall mission that you set and the goals and objectives that you put in place to implement this program. Make sure that the focus to focus on those directly involved in the program. When you're evaluating the program, you are focusing on those who are directly involved in the program. Key players responsible at this step would be like a program director or a program evaluation consultant. You can use tools like outcome and efficiency questionnaires, pre and post surveys, interviews with the participants, community data, symptom tracking by therapists, etc. All these things can be used to evaluate the effectiveness of the program that you have implemented. Now we're going to talk more about program evaluation. Before we get into the phases, just understand that when you are evaluating a program, practitioners must consider the design being used and the data to be collected. You must also demonstrate the outcomes of the program. You must help the program team be aware of their progress and the impact of the program. With this information, the team can modify processes if goals and objectives are not reached appropriately or in a timely manner. Evaluation planning should be done consistently and should occur throughout the life of the program. Okay, so you should also be not just planning for the development phase, but you're also planning for the evaluation, how you're going to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. And so the program evaluation phases are planning, implementation, completion, and dissemination reporting. Now, before your organization starts with program evaluation, these are some questions that you should be clear on, okay? What will be evaluated? What criteria will be used to judge program performance? What standards of performance on the criteria must be reached for the program to be considered successful? What evidence will indicate performance on the criteria related to the standards? And what conclusions about program performance are justified based on the available evidence? So before you even get into evaluating the program, make sure you at least know what you're evaluating and the criteria and the standards and all these things before you start evaluating the program. Program evaluation is the systematic assessment of the processes and or outcomes or effectiveness of a program with the intent of furthering its development and improvement. So there are a few different types of evaluation that I want to share with you. The first one is process evaluation. This identifies whether the program was implemented as planned, goals were met, and the needs were addressed. Okay? This is also referred to as implementation evaluation. Now, one that I don't have on here that I do want to add is the formative evaluation. And this ensures that a program or a program activity is feasible, appropriate, and acceptable before it is fully implemented. It is usually conducted when a new program or activity is being developed or when an existing one is being adapted or modified. So keep in mind that a formative evaluation usually happens before the program is actually conducted or being developed. Now we have an impact evaluation. This explores the short-term impact or changes made by the program. So it's basically assessing the program's effectiveness in achieving its ultimate goals. And then lastly, we have the outcome evaluation, which explores the long-term impact of the program by identifying behavioral change, improved quality of life, and impact of the community need. So basically, it measures the program's effects in the target population by assessing the progress in the outcomes or outcome objective that the program was set out to achieve. This is usually where we look at the logic model and we kind of compare the process and the evaluation of the progress there. Now, here are some program evaluation basics. First, you want to establish clear outcomes. So, this is aligning your programs to the change or outcomes that you want to accomplish. Second, you want to create or modify data tools and systems. Determine the most appropriate tool to collect, track, and monitor the accomplishment of the identified outcomes. Some examples include participant surveys and assessments. So after you establish the clear outcomes, create and modify the data tools and systems, then you want to analyze the data. Once it has been collected, and present the results in an easily understood format. So that is going to be key. Once you analyze the data that you collected, you want to make sure that you present it in a way that is easily understood. Okay. And then after you do that, then you want to use that data that you analyze to make informed decisions about the program. So this is where you compile a summary report and or slide deck presentation of the evaluation data for stakeholders internally and externally to review the results and discuss the implications. So there are some common research questions that drive many organizations to conduct program evaluations to get answers. And so some of these questions are the participants being reached as intended? If yes, why? If not, you also want to know why. To what extent are desired program changes occurring? Was there a significant difference or just a tiny difference? Is there a specific group that is not being impacted? Is the program worth the resources that it costs? What is the return on investment or the ROI for this program or service? These are some important questions that you want to ask as well when you are conducting program evaluation. Now, let's talk about stakeholders. Stakeholders are those who care about the program or the effort that you are proposing. Okay, these may include those presumed to benefit, like children and their parents or guardians, those with particular influence, these could be elected or appointed officials, and those who might support the effort, potential allies, or even those who might oppose it, potential opponents. Okay, people or organizations involved in the program operations. This is a common type of stakeholder, okay? This may include the community members, sponsors, collaborators, coalition partners, funding officials, administrators, managers, and staff. These are all people that are involved in the actual program operations. They are considered stakeholders. Another category of stakeholders would be people or organizations that are served or affected by the program. So this may include your clients, family members, neighborhood organizations, academic institutions, elected and appointed officials, advocacy groups, and community residents. Individuals who are openly skeptical or antagonistic toward the program may also be important to involve. So people that are not for the program, it's also a good idea to involve them as well because this could also provide a different perspective to your program. Another category of stakeholders are the primary intended users of the evaluation. So this is going to be the specific individuals who are in a position to decide and or do something with the results. So the three categories of stakeholders: people or organizations involved in the program operations, people or organizations that are served or affected by the program, and people who are primarily intended to use the results from the evaluation. Now, here we're going to talk about the steps in program evaluation. So, one of the primary steps is you want to engage the stakeholders. Again, this is the people or the organizations that have something to gain or lose from what will be learned from the evaluation. Okay? Stakeholders must be part of the evaluation to ensure that their unique perspectives are understood. When the stakeholders are not appropriately involved, evaluation findings are likely to be ignored, criticized, or resisted. However, if they are a part of the process, people are likely to feel a good deal of ownership for the evaluation process and results. They will probably want to develop it, defend it, and make sure that the evaluation really works. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are first engaging our stakeholders. Next, we want to describe the program. This is going to be a summary of the intervention being evaluated. It should explain what the program is trying to accomplish and how it tries to bring about those changes. The description will also illustrate the program's core components and elements, its ability to make changes, its stages of development, and how the program fits into the larger organizational and community environment. This is also where you present your statement of need, your expectations, the activities of the program, the resources, the stages of development, the context of the program, and the logic model. Okay, so this is all included in describing the program. Next, after we describe our program, then we want to focus on the evaluation design, doing advanced planning about where the evaluation is headed and what steps it will take to get there. It isn't possible or useful for an evaluation to try to answer all questions for all stakeholders. There must be a focus. So that is where focusing on this evaluation design comes into place. What are you actually going to focus on when it comes to evaluating this program? Okay. Now, the next step is we want to gather credible evidence. The information learned should be seen by stakeholders as believable, trustworthy, and relevant to answer their questions. Encouraging participation, again, by stakeholders can also enhance perceived credibility. When stakeholders help define questions and gather data, they will be more likely to accept the evaluation's conclusions and act on its recommendations. So, again, making sure we are engaging our stakeholders in program evaluation. I could see this coming across somewhat in some type of ASWB exam question. So, just making sure that when you have a question regarding program evaluation, that you are not only knowing the steps, but make sure that you are engaging the stakeholders every step of the way. Just like in program development, we want to make sure that we are engaging the community members every step of the way. For program evaluation, we are focusing a lot on engaging the stakeholders. So now we've described the program, we focus on the evaluation design, we've used that design to gather credible evidence. Now we have this evidence, we want to justify the conclusions. Okay? Conclusions become justified when they are linked to the evidence gathered and judged against agreed upon values set by the stakeholders. Stakeholders must agree that conclusions are justified in order to use the evaluation results with confidence. Okay? So, again, you want to know that the conclusions are becoming justified when they are linked to the evidence gathered. Okay, remember we gathered that credible evidence, and then they're judged against the agreed upon values set by the stakeholders. So you take the evidence gathered and you judge that against whatever the values that were previously set by the stakeholders. And that's how you want to justify your conclusions. That is going to be a very important step in program evaluation. And then lastly, you want to ensure use and share lessons learned from your evaluation. Okay. This is communicating the procedures Are the lessons learned from an evaluation to the relevant audiences in a timely, unbiased, and consistent fashion? Like other elements of the evaluation, the reporting strategy should be discussed in advance with intended users and stakeholders. So, again, we don't want to leave them out. So, we want to ensure the use and share the lessons that we learned from our evaluation at this point. So, here again is the list of program evaluation steps. Just remember what takes place within all these steps. I hope that this presentation was helpful to provide you some insight on program development and program evaluation. It is my hope that you can use the information here to be able to generalize the content and be able to answer questions or relatable questions on the ASWB exam. At least you will know the processes, the steps, what happens within these processes, what happens within these steps to be able to apply that content to scenarios and questions that are on the actual ASWB exam. So, again, thank you for watching. I appreciate you being here. If you are not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do me a favor and do that. And I'll see you in the next video. Let's continue to get those passes the savvy way.